Now, when it comes to best practice for naming tables and columns and values, there really are no fixed rules, but we do recommend that you use language and abbreviations that are commonly used within your organisation that everybody agrees on and considers them to be common terminology. A best practice is to give your tables and columns and measure descriptive business terms and replace any underscores with spaces, much more user-friendly. And be consistent with your abbreviations and your prefaces and words like number and ID. Excessively short abbreviations can be very confusing if they are not commonly used within your organisation. So put a great deal of thought into how you want to name things so it's nice and easy to find things and work with the data. And when replacing values, try to imagine how those values will appear ultimately in your reports. You don't want them to be too long and too difficult to read. You want them to fit nicely on a visual, which we will look at later. Avoid acronyms in values is a good idea. Provide text that fits in with your visuals and is easy for people to relate to. So we've actually saved this file as data manipulation. But if I change my mind about how this Power BI file is to be saved, the file name, I can actually go back into File and Save As, and now I want to call it Model. And it's naturally a PBIX file, and I save. It'll ask me if I want to replace, so I'll just go yes. Yours may not ask you, of course. Now I want to have a look at the query, Sales 2019 to 2021. I want to change the name of the column, country and region, up here, to just country. So I click on the column heading and I press F2 and I just type country and press enter. So it's easy enough to rename a column. Now in the customers query, I want to do some manipulation here as well. Customer ID, I want to make that easier to understand, so I'm going to name it ID. Company name, I think if I click it and press F2, it's easier just to call that company. And contact name, if I click that and press F2, I'm just actually going to call that contact. So keep your names short for your visuals in your report and easy to relate to. I'm going to change contact title to just title and enter. And lastly, I'll change postcode to just postal code to just postcode with a space in between. So I press F2 and I'll put a space and take out the AL. So I've renamed my columns. I want to apply those changes to my Power BI file. So I hit the drop down on the Close and Apply button and just hit Apply. And that will re-establish the connections, evaluate, and just reload the data into my Power BI file. Okay. Now let's look at data types. When you import a table from any source, Power BI just automatically scans the first 1000 rows. That's the default setting, and it detects the type of data that exists in each of the columns. And it displays the type of data using the little symbol that you see to the left of the column heading. What I want to look at now is actually changing some of the data types. Let's start by going and selecting the Transform tab in the ribbon. When you choose the Transform tab in the ribbon, it means that you want to transform the data in a selected column. And I particularly want to look at the Data Type button here and hit the drop down to see what options you've got. So the sort of data types you've got are saying that the data in a column is a decimal number. So a decimal number means that it could have a variety of decimal places, like an exchange rate would have 4 decimal places. If we chose a fixed decimal number, then it actually is 2 decimal places, and a whole number is no decimal places. You can change something to percentage and date and time, or just a date or just a time. Whoops, and I didn't mean to do that, so I'm going to hit the X to delete that step. The other things you've got are date and time, time zone, and even duration. Text is a common one, a true or false column, or a binary column. And so there are a variety of data sources that you can select in Power Query, and they will change the type of data in that column. Now let's have a look. I want to have a look at the Orders query, and particularly I want to change the data type of the Date Order column. The reason for that is the order date for some reason has brought a time through, and yet the time is irrelevant and actually incorrect. So I'm going to change the data type either by going to Transform in the ribbon, hitting this drop down here and choosing Date, Or the other way is to hit this button here and change it to date. Or the other way is probably just to right-click the column heading and change the data type, change type, and choose date. So again, a variety of ways. Choose a way and you'll notice that the time will automatically be dropped off. Now you need to repeat that for required dates. So I'm going to hit this button here and I'm going to change required date to just a date, not a date and a time. I'll do the same for shipped date. It's not a date and a time, it's just a date. Now let's have a look at the employees table. In the employees table, the birth date also incorrectly has a time, so I'm going to change that data type to a date. And if I scroll across to hire date, that also needs to be just a date. I'll now go to the order details query or table, and I want to change the discount, which is here, to a percentage. It's showing me as a fixed number at this stage. So I click this drop down here and I choose percentage. And immediately I'm now seeing the values in that column showing as a percentage. So that's the data types.